Welcome to Ask For It, a podcast about owning your career from interviews to promotions and everything in between. Hosted by Amit Trivedi, ex-Salesforce and founder of High Performa. Every week we get into the mindset, strategy, and confidence it takes to grow on your own terms. Have you ever thought to yourself, I'm applying everywhere but not hearing back. Maybe I need to rework my resume again. Should I buy another template or hire someone else to fix it for me? Then I want you to pause because I'm here to tell you that your resume is probably not the only thing holding you back. Let's talk about what actually is and how to fix it. I can't tell you how many clients have come to me after months and sometimes even a year of rewriting their resume over and over again. And they'll tell me things like, I think my format is off, or should I add more keywords, or maybe I need to make it one page. And I get it. Your resume is your golden ticket, right? It's the one thing that's really going to get your foot in the door. And that is true. But there is so much more than just your resume. And a lot of people get caught up in constantly tweaking, constantly changing it without looking at it as a whole picture. And the one thing that you really need to understand is that the resume is not the product. You are. And more often than not, the issue won't be the resume. It's more because you haven't built a clear, confident story around what you bring to the table. So, one rule of thumb here is that if your resume is getting you interviews, then you probably have a good resume, and it may just be small tweaks here and there to really get the role you want. So, it's always good to focus on that to make sure that you do have an optimized resume, as it is important. But what I'm saying here is that let's say you're getting your foot in the door, you're getting those initial interviews, and you're still not getting traction. So either you're not getting proper interviews or you're not able to pass the screening. So that's where this is really going to come in today to see how you can actually fix that. And having a wonderful resume is kind of like having a beautiful storefront. But when someone walks in, there's no actual product. It's just a confusing, vague pitch about what you might be able to do. So no matter how nice the packaging is, if the story inside isn't landing, you're not going to convert. Let's dig into what's actually going wrong when people aren't getting traction. So that means either no interviews at all or lots of interviews but no offers. And the first issue is that you don't know your narrative. And I always ask all my clients a version of this question. Why should they hire you for this role specifically? And most of the time I get one of two things. So the first one is they just kind of stop, they pause, and not quite sure what to say. Or they start to ramble a little bit and start giving me like a list of disconnected tasks and titles and start talking through their whole resume. And here's the thing, your resume is telling me what you did. But in interviews and your application overall, they want to understand who you are and why it matters. You really need to focus on the why. Your job in the interview is to connect the dots between your past experience and what the company is looking for. And that is supposed to be intentional in your answering. If you had a non-linear career or if you're switching industries, then it's even more critical that you craft a story for them. Don't assume that the recruiter will figure it out and be able to understand what you're trying to connect with your resume and your application. So your job is to make the alignment for this role an obvious choice. A second issue that a lot of people are facing is that they're underselling their value. And this one will hit home for a lot of people. You're taught to be humble and to let your work speak for itself. But in a job search, silence is not the strategy. I see it all the time. Resumes are filled with responsibilities and not results. For example, you would write, I manage social media or I supported in the social media strategy. Instead, what you should be writing is that I grew the engagement 200% in 6 months, for example. You want to make the show like, what did you do specifically and quantify it. And then a lot of times when you're talking in interviews, sometimes people say like, well, I just did kind of this type of work, or I supported this and I was part of a team. But instead, you need to show what you did. What's the impact? Lead with saying, I led X, I drove Y, I delivered Z. Owning your impact won't make you sound arrogant. It makes you hireable because your interviewer doesn't want to hire the team you worked with before. They want to hire you. So you need to show exactly the impact that you made and the results that you drove. Take responsibility for what you did and show it. A third issue here is that you're winging the interview. And this is where most people do lose their offer, even if they're extremely qualified. Often I'll ask my clients, "How did your last interview go?" And they'll say, "I think it was okay. We just kind of chatted." And that right there is a problem because an interview isn't a casual chat, it's a sales conversation, and you're the product. So you really need to be clear, confident, and prepared to guide the conversation. If the interviewer is not asking that many questions or does not really probing into your experience and what you prepped, then it shows that they may not be interested already or that you need to really step up and kind of take control of the conversation yourself. So, what you need here is a strong elevator pitch. This comes in when they ask you, "Tell me about yourself," or "Walk me through your resume," or "Why did you apply for this job?" You'll also need clear examples of your impact. And this is where you need to focus on the STAR framework. I have another episode on the STAR framework, so I would suggest going back, listening to that, and crafting about 10 to 15 examples to be prepared with. Come with answers tailored to the company's needs. Understand what the company's looking for, what your role is, what the gap is that you're filling, and tailor your answers to tie it back to that. And then close, always close. This is something where it's mostly sales driven, but when you're interviewing, you are selling your services. So you need to be able to drive the next steps. Ask them, say, "What's next? If I were to get this role, how would you see success?" Start to position yourself as the person they're going to hire. And when people say that they didn't really connect with the interviewer at the end, it's not usually a personality mismatch. Like sometimes it can be, but mostly it's a clarity gap. It shows that you didn't clearly show them how you can solve the problems that they actually have. Okay, that was a lot of issues that I just outlined, and I'm sure everyone's resonated with one of them in the past, but let's talk about how we can fix them and what to focus on instead. Here are 4 things that's going to move the needle more than doing another resume reformat. So, number 1, get clear on your positioning. Start to ask yourself, what's the red thread in your story? And what that essentially means is what is linking your past experience to experience 3 years ago to what you're doing today and where you're applying. Come up with your narrative. Then try to dig into what kind of problems do you solve? And what roles are you truly aligned with and why? You need to answer these things for yourself, write them down, do a few brainstorming, and create a narrative and a story about yourself and why you're moving in this certain position for this new roles. Your story should make sense to someone who's never met you before and doesn't know anything about your background. It should feel cohesive, even if your career path hasn't been linear. Okay, there is a reason why you're applying for the job in front of you, even if it's in a different industry. So come up with that story. And I would recommend practicing it. Practice this with either an interview coach that you hire, or just practice it on someone in your family who is not from your industry and who doesn't really know your career path. And if they understand it and they feel compelled and they say, "Oh, okay, this is why you're applying for this role," and they have that aha moment, then you have the right story. Tip number 2 is to build a story bank. Don't just prep for interviews, you need to build assets. Come up with 5 to 7 key stories that showcase your skills in action. Think STAR format, which is situation, task, action, and result. And these stories should hit certain themes. So think leadership, problem solving, collaboration, conflict resolution, innovation, ownership. Be flexible enough that you can reuse them in different questions. I have an entire episode on this as well, so I won't dive too much into here, but I do suggest taking another listen through that one. Tip number 3, practice out loud. Okay, so this is a step most people skip. You're doing it, you're writing these stories, you're thinking about it, you're contemplating it. But when you actually say it, it has a different impact. And sometimes it can come out flat, it can come rambling, generic, it can sound over rehearsed. So instead, just you can either work with a coach if you can, practice with a friend, and if none of those things work, just record yourself. Get onto Zoom, create a meeting with yourself, record it, listen to you saying it back, and say the words out loud multiple times. Don't read it. Say it fresh every single time so that it's very natural. Okay, and the last tip here is to focus on alignment, not perfection. Hiring is not about finding the perfect candidate, it's about finding the right fit. Interviewers and hiring managers, they're looking for someone who understands the problem and is ready to solve it. So your job is to make it so easy for them to see that you're that person. So go in, be inquisitive. Ask them questions too about the role, about the problem they're trying to solve, and start to fit yourself in as the person that's going to solve it and the person that's a right cultural fit for the company. All right, that's the 4 major tips there that really will help solve the issues. But before we wrap up, I do want to touch on something a little deeper. A lot of people stay stuck in resume land because it feels productive. The reason why people start tweaking their resume, changing it, coming up with different versions, and spending a lot of time there is because it's safe. It's behind the scenes. You can update it while you're laying in bed. You can do it while you're at home when you're just in your pajamas, and you'll never face upright rejection. But if you stay there too long, you're avoiding the real work of getting out there, interviewing, fixing the way you're communicating, the way you're answering questions, the storytelling behind it. And that's a real sales skill and muscle that you have to learn to flex. So take a lot of self-reflection and work on it. Work on storytelling and most importantly, work on confidence building. Because the truth here is that you are likely more qualified than you're giving yourself credit for. But unless you show up like it, no one else will believe it either. So I want you to really sit down and try and make a mindset shift. Ask yourself honestly, is my resume holding me back? If yes, let's tweak it. Work on it. Make sure you nail your resume for the role you're applying for. But if you say no, then it's time to dig deep. Then it's time to look at the way you're interviewing and see where you can make changes and tweaks to really nail the next one. If this episode resonated with you, you're not alone. It's what I help people with every single day. It's very tough to kind of nail those interviews and try and understand where the problem lies. Is it the resume or is it the way you're interviewing? But by applying all these tips and tricks, I'm sure that you'll land the next one. So in the meantime, until I talk to you all next week, don't forget to keep asking for it. Thank you for listening to Ask For It. If this episode was helpful, I'd love if you subscribed and shared it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready for a bit more support, I do offer one-on-one coaching. The link's in the show notes if you want to check that out. Until next time, keep showing up and don't forget to ask for it.